expired domains can be. However, before you go out there and start buying every domain, in the last video, we covered just how powerful and amazing expired domains can be. However, before you go out there and start buying every domain you see, I want to walk you through my very own expired domains buying checklist. So this is actually my own checklist that I've created based on my own experience, and I've wasted a lot of money in the past buying expired domains that I probably shouldn't have, just because in the spur of the moment I thought it was a really good domain. I didn't do as much due diligence as I should have done, and I ended up getting burned and buying a toxic domain. This video here is to make sure that you do not fall into any of the mistakes that I first did when I learned about expired domains. You can pretty much follow this checklist and avoid the most common pitfalls that the majority of people run into. It consists of 7 different metrics to check, and as I was just saying, if you follow this checklist to the book, you don't skip out anything, it will drastically reduce the probability of you buying a toxic domain, or essentially any domain which has no positive impact. So what is step 1 of my checklist? Well, step 1 is to check the website's DA. DA stands for domain authority, and if you remember, is the metric we looked at earlier on in the course when we determined how difficult it is to rank for a specific niche. So DA is a metric owned by a company called Moz, and in a nutshell, it basically predicts how likely a website is to rank in the SERPs. SERP standing for Search Engine Results Page, which is just a fancy word of saying how likely it is for that website to rank on the first page of Google. Domain authority works on a range of 1 to 100. The higher the number, the more authoritative the domain is. The figure that I found to work really well when analyzing domain authorities on potential expired domains is any domain that is above domain authority 15. Of course, if you can find a domain which is above domain authority 15, maybe domain authority 40 for example, then it's going to make it a lot easier to beat out the competition, especially if the majority of the websites on page 1 are domain authority 20. Because that would essentially mean that from the get-go, your website is more authoritative than the sites already on page 1. The second thing to check when you're reviewing expired domains is what we call trust flow. Trust flow is actually a Majestic metric. So Majestic is another SEO company out there. There are so many SEO software companies. You've got Moz, you've got Ahrefs, SEMrush, Majestic. So Majestic have their own metric and it's called trust flow. And pretty much what trust flow does is it provides us with an indication on how trustworthy the links are that the domain has. So it doesn't matter if a website has 1,000 links. If Majestic can see that a lot of those links are coming from spammy websites, maybe in different languages, then it's going to give that website a lower trust flow rating. So it's a really good metric we can use to increase the chances of us wasting our time on any bad expired domains. Trust flow ranges from 1 to 100, and the higher the number, the more trustworthy the site's backlink profile is. And the metric that I found to work really well is anything above 15. Which is actually the same as domain authority. Again, same applies here. The higher the trust flow, the better the site is going to be. The third thing I like to take a look at is what we call citation flow, or CF for short. Citation flow is another metric from Majestic, and what this does is pretty much based on the number and strength of the links pointing to the domain. So it doesn't matter if a website has 1,000 links, for example. So just to clarify, citation flow is different to trust flow, and that is because trust flow is all about trust. Citation flow is not about trust, it's based on the number and the strength of the links. Meaning when we use both of these metrics in combination when analyzing a domain, it is going to really help and drastically reduce the chances of buying a domain which is really not worth the money. Citation flow ranges from 1 to 100, just like domain authority and trust flow, and like all of these metrics, the higher the number, the better. So once again, for citation flow, I like to go for any domain above 15. Again, 15 just seems to be the sweet number. I used to actually have it down at 10 when I first started looking into expired domains, but I always found the odd website used to creep in here and there. However, it's way less likely when you are working to 15 and above. The fourth thing you want to be taking a look at is what we call RD. RD stands for referring domains. Referring domains is an Ahrefs metric. So as you can see, we are using metrics from multiple SEO tools. And the reason why is because it gives us an unbiased opinion on how well that domain actually is. If you're just using one SEO software, which has the same algorithm to determine that metric, then your results cannot be as reliable as that algorithm could be in favor for specific domains. So when you're using metrics from multiple providers, it pretty much reduces that risk. And don't worry, as you do not have to sign up to all of these different tools to access these metrics. In the next video, I'll be showing you one tool which pulls them all together in one interface. But going back to what I was saying, referring domains is a metric from Ahrefs, and what it does is it provides you with an indication of how many unique websites are linking to the domain. The keyword in this sentence is the word unique. You see, the same website can link to another website multiple times, and that can lead to an increase in the number of backlinks that site has. So if you're just looking at the number of backlinks a website has, then that can potentially cause some problems. Where if you're just looking at referring domains, it's going to be way more reliable. And when it comes to referring domains, there is no range, although the higher the number, the better. As a minimum, I wouldn't consider any domain that has less than 50 referring domains. Moving on to step 5, which is check the site has a clean backlink profile. So the domain you are purchasing should definitely have a clean backlink profile. And what do I mean by a backlink profile? Well, pretty much you just want to make sure the website has no links from shady websites. Shady websites is going to be subjective. For example, if you're trying to buy a site in the English niche, then you don't want to see any of those spammy Russian or Chinese links that typically spammers build. And you also want to make sure your website does not have any backlinks with questionable anchor text. And you also want to make sure the domain has no links from adult related websites as well. You'll see a lot of websites that have been spammed to death and they've got loads of links linking to them, literally saying the word Viagra, Viagra pills, literally anything to do with the adult niches. Spammers also like to send lots of those links to websites too. So in a nutshell, when you're checking a website's backlink profile, just make sure there's nothing shady there whatsoever. Moving on to the next step in my checklist, which is step number 6, and this is where you determine how many times the domain has been dropped. And what I mean by that is ownership has been dropped and it's been laid there and someone has picked it up. The reason why this is important for us to know is because if a domain is really that good, it shouldn't be getting dropped that often. People should not be forgetting about it, they should be treating it like gold dust. Of course, mistakes do happen and sometimes domains do drop every now and then, so what I do recommend is that you take the situation into consideration. For example, if you see a relatively new domain that's been dropped more than 2 times, then that can be a red flag. However, if that same domain has been dropped 2 times over the course of 10 years, then that's not that bad, right? That's only dropped once every 5 years. But pretty much what you need to do is ask yourself, has this domain been frequently dropped? And if it has, you want to avoid that. To find out this information on how many times it's been dropped and how old the domain is, because of course it's going to be subjective, we can use a website such as Whoisrequest, as I'm going to run through in the next video. Moving on to the final part of our checklist, and that is check the website using Wayback Machine. Wayback Machine is essentially an archive of the whole internet. And what it does is it provides us with screenshots of a domain since it was first registered. So we could literally go over to Wayback Machine, plug in the URL of an expired domain we are potentially interested in, and it shows how that website has changed over time. We can then use that information when evaluating a domain to determine if it's being used for spam. As expired domains are so valuable in the SEO world, a lot of people tend to buy them and redirect them to absolutely irrelevant spammy websites in hope they can power up their websites and generate more traffic and sales. So if you do come across a really good expired domain, but it was redirected to a really dodgy website, 9 times out of 10 is something related to the adult industry, gambling, casinos, finance, all those really shady industries, then that is a potential red flag that you want to avoid that domain. The great thing about Wayback Machine is that it's completely free to use as well. If you're struggling to understand how it works, then do not worry for now, as in the next video, I'm going to be giving you a real-time walkthrough and going through all of these steps 1 to 6 using some expired domains that we're going to discover. So that is everything in a nutshell. Here is your 7-step checklist. Please make sure you are fully aware of this process. I will include it as a downloadable resource as well, just for ease. That way you can print it off and literally tick each box one by one when you're viewing an expired domain. Okay, so now we've covered that, I'm going to see you in the next video where I'm going to be giving you a real-time walkthrough on how you can find the best expired domains. I can't wait for it. I'll see you there.